Hello and a very warm welcome to News Today. I am Pratik and I'll be talking about the news discussion for 30th October. In the first news, we have Niti Aayog unveils a report on India's advanced manufacturing roadmap. So in this news, we'll talk about what exactly is advanced manufacturing and what are the frontier technologies that the Niti Aayog is emphasizing upon. The second is integrated cold chain and value addition infrastructure scheme. So here we'll discuss the whole idea of food processing sector in the country, the challenges and the core components of this particular scheme. Third, workforce challenges in India's primary healthcare system. This news is there because of the recent protest by the ASHA workers in Chhattisgarh. So we'll look into some of the challenges that the ASHA workers and the Anganwadi workers faces. The fourth news is on China files complaint in WTO over subsidies under the PLI scheme. So here we'll look into the nature of complaint that the China has filed in WTO with respect to India's PLI scheme, and we'll look into the merit of that scheme, issue. Then the last news is about India's total installed electricity capacity crosses 500 gigawatts. So here we'll understand the whole electricity and the roadmap of renewable energy sector in the country. Then we have certain quick updates, and in the place in news, we'll be discussing Tajikistan. So in the first news, we have Niti Aayog unveils a report on India's advanced manufacturing roadmap to global leadership, right? So this is a topic that is very much important from the perspective of GS Paper 3 economy, because it is talking about the perspective or the prospective of India becoming a leader or a global leader in the advanced manufacturing sector, right? So here we have to understand a couple of things. First thing is, what exactly is advanced manufacturing? And how is it different from the traditional manufacturing? Okay, so the traditional manufacturing is about assembly line, it is about repetition, okay? But in advanced manufacturing, what is the differentiating aspect is that it integrates technology such as AI, machine learning, robotics, and it also uses different materials such as the various kind of composite materials. So in advanced manufacturing, the scope of value creation is immense. Secondly, it also have huge potential for employment. It also has huge potential as far as export promotion is concerned. So as far as India's export competitiveness is concerned, advanced manufacturing can play a huge role in this regard. Therefore, Niti Aayog has unveiled a roadmap that will provide and that will take into consideration all those steps that should be taken so that India becomes a global leader as far as advanced manufacturing is concerned. So within this, what the Niti Aayog has identified, it has identified 13 high impact sectors, and it has prioritized 4 distinctive frontier technologies. Frontier technologies are the cutting edge or the bleeding edge technologies which are still in the process of development. So here it has categorized into 4 categories. First is your artificial intelligence / machine learning. Second is your advanced material. Third, digital twins and robotics. So we'll discuss all these aspects very shortly. But first of all, let us understand what is the impediment or what is the whole reason why this roadmap is required. What is the imperatives, key imperatives that is required? So first thing is that if you look at the contribution of the manufacturing sector in the country, it is hardly 16%, 15 to 17% of the Indian GDP, right? So this number is very low as compared to the East Asian peers that saw the contribution of manufacturing as high as 25%, especially with respect to China, or when it comes to South Korea, it was as high as up to 35 or 30%, right? So this is the number that we should be aspiring towards, and this is the number that signifies that there is some sort of structural issues with respect to the manufacturing sector. So what are these structural issues? First is that there is limited investment in research and development. In fact, the total research and development investment is around less than 1% of the GDP of country. Moreover, these investment does not come from the private sector. This is majorly from the public sector only. Secondly, it also limits what is called as creative destruction. Now, recently, Nobel Prize in Economics was awarded for innovation and for creative destruction. The idea of creative destruction, it means that through innovation, the old ways of doing things must die and new ways of doing things should come, right? So this part, research and development, because it is very limited in India, we are not able to witness what is called as creative destruction. Second, there is fragmented value chains, which means that the value chain production in India is very much broken down, so it does not help in scaling up the production, right? It also provides, it inhibits consistency and integration with the global supply chain. Then there is problem with respect to regulation. So there is regulatory complexity, or you can also say that there is red tapeism, and there is policy uncertainty in terms of different types of policies that keep coming with respect to manufacturing or industries. Next, because of this, there is an opportunity cost. Opportunity cost is something which is very much significant from the perspective of economics, which means that if you are not doing something, what are you missing out on, right? So with respect to the opportunity cost, if we are missing the frontier technology adoption, it is going to cost us around $270 billion in potential manufacturing GDP by 2035. So because of all these reasons, it is highly imperative that India invest in the advanced manufacturing sector, right? And for this, Niti Aayog, as I discussed earlier, has identified 4 areas. First is your AI ML. Second is advanced material science. Third is with respect to digital twins. And fourth is robotics. So let us briefly discuss what exactly it entails. So when it comes to artificial intelligence and machine learning, it is going to help us in 2 ways. First, it is going to help us understand the demand in real time. Right? So demand in terms of not just the ones which are present in the dominant languages like Hindi and English, it is also going to help understand the vernacular demand in the different languages, and especially it is going to help in tier 2 or 3 supplies to respond dynamically with respect to the demand. So that is one of the key aspects of manufacturing or smart manufacturing. Second is with respect to the pharmaceutical products. So as you all know that pharmaceutical products, India is also called as the pharmacy of the world because of its dominance in the generic pharma products. But the problem is that pharma companies require or are supposed to undergo several regulatory measures. Now, all the regulatory measures can be done through the AI agents in real time. So this can help in accelerating batch release and enhance global trust. When it comes to advanced material sciences, it again will have twofold benefits. First, with respect to providing lightweight multifunctional composite. Especially, it is going to help us in railway sector and defense sector, which is going to combine strength with flexibility. Second, it can also help us with green catalyst, which adopting nano-engineered catalyst in chemical manufacturing. And what is the benefit of this? It will help in low-emission synthesis, improving strategic supply chain resilience. Then when it comes to digital twins, so first of all, let us understand the concept of digital twin. Digital twin basically means that you are creating a virtual twin of a physical entity. For example, if you want to test the efficacy of an airplane or a jet engine, instead of doing it manually, what you can do is you can create a digital twin of that and then simulate all the operations, not physically, but digital means, right? So this is data driven, it replicates physical system. So this has a potential to accelerate aerospace and defense research and development. And this will also reduce development time first, and physical testing cost. Again, so it will have huge implication. Second, It will also help in predictive maintenance, creating real-time replicas of construction and mining machinery to detect early failure stages, extending the asset life. And the last one is robotics. So if AI can be considered as brain, we can consider robotics as the hands, right? So robotics essentially can be used here in two perspectives. First, with respect to tele-robotics, which means that enabling remote control of robotics for tasks in hazardous environment, such as chemical plants, nuclear facilities, supported by 5G and haptic feedback. Then the second way in which robotics can be used is through exoskeletons, where the human worker's effort can be augmented or it can be supported through wearable devices to reduce physical strain and injury risk in strenuous or repetitive tasks. Okay. So these are some of the potential application of these frontier technologies, and this is what the Niti Aayog has advised the policymakers to invest in those technologies, and these are the potential applications that it can be used. The idea is that the contribution of manufacturing sector to the overall GDP can cross 25% by 2035, and also India becomes a global leader as far as advanced manufacturing is concerned. Now, when it comes to the PYQ, UPSC has asked a very futuristic question from this topic. And the question is, what are the areas of prohibitive labor that can be sustainably managed by robots? Discuss the initiatives that can propel research in premier research institutions for substantive and gainful innovation. So here you can talk about telerobotics and exoskeleton and other areas of research or application as per this report. Okay. Next topic is integrated cold chain and value addition infrastructure scheme. And this is directly from GS paper 3 economy, particularly it is from the food processing topic, right? Now here the important thing to note is that with growing urbanization, the demand for fresh food has increased and people are now more particular about their health. So there is a demand increase with respect to the nutritious food, and also on the supply side, the farmers also want to enhance their income. So if you increase or if you want to increase the shelf life of the agricultural produce and also want to increase its cost, then food processing is one thing that can help in this regard. And India is among the first country, or India is among the larger, the first country in terms of production of fruits and vegetables. But when it comes to the actual food production, it is it is not that great because of the high cost of wastages or because of the wastages. So these food produce or the agricultural produce do not reach their destination intact. Therefore, there is lot to be done with respect to the food processing initiative. With respect to that, in 2017, the government introduced a scheme known as Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sampada Yojana. Within this, there were several fragments, including creation of mega food parks, forward and backward supply linkages, and there was also a scheme that was known as integrated cold chain and value addition infrastructure. So the point that I'm trying to highlight is that it is not a new scheme, even though this is a centrally sector scheme under the Ministry of Food Processing Industry, but it is not a new scheme, right? Why it is in news? Because of the fact that several times the funding with respect to this scheme keeps on increasing. That is one thing. The other change that is done is that it has now been made a demand-driven scheme. Now, what do you mean by demand-driven scheme? A demand-driven scheme means that earlier, the construction of cold chain and value addition would be dependent or decided by the government or government functionaries. But now it will be decided not by the government, by individuals or the consumers or the farmers, right? So it is going to be dependent on the demand of the people who are actually using it. So the discretion of the government will be reduced and it will be more effective and efficient in that way. Other than that, we also need to look into some of the core aspect of this scheme as well, right? So what exactly is the core objective? It is to address the post-harvest loss in the perishable commodities in India, right? So with respect to other objectives, first is that it seeks to build seamless cold chain from farmer to consumer. So this is why it is called as integrated, right? So from farmer to consumer, there would be several intermediary steps. So this scheme seeks to build an integrated cold value chain. Second, it seeks to reduce the harvest losses through scientific preservation and efficient storage system. So one of the reasons why fruits or vegetables or any agricultural horticultural product, they they do not reach the consumers in intact, in shape, or in good form, is because there is absence of cold storage chains. Third, it also includes value addition. So the second component of the scheme is about value addition. So what is value addition? Value addition basically means in ensuring its shelf life, so that if it has a shelf life of say 10 days, it can increase up to 1 year or more than that. So this is by promoting processing of the produce. Third, ensuring steady food availability of safe, high quality food products for the consumer. So it is not just it is not just impacting the producers, but it also keeps consumers at its objective, right? So these are some of the important objectives of this particular scheme. And what are its key components? First is farm level infrastructure. So at the farm level, before it is sent to the cooling chambers or the cold chains, it is first done, pre-cooling is done, which means that the raw material is first put inside, it's treated, and it is ensured that it is fit for the cold chains, right? So that is called as pre-cooling process. Then it goes to the processing center. Processing center ensures that all the important work is done properly in terms of processing, in terms of removal of dirt, etc. is done. Standardization is also done here. Then it is done to the sent to the distribution hub, where there is centralized storage, consolidation, and dispatch centers for efficient movement of produce. And lastly, there is refrigerated transportation from the source to the destination. And who are eligible under this scheme? So first, it is very comprehensive in its eligibility. So here, not only the individuals who are the farmers that are part of this scheme, but also organizations are also part of this, and not a very simple kind of organization such as FPO, that is the farmer producer organization, but also farmer producer companies, NGOs, PSUs, firms, companies, corporations, cooperatives, and self-help group. So the idea is that they don't want to exclude anyone from the scope of this particular scheme. And apart from the ICCVAI, there are other schemes which can complement. So government has also undertaken several schemes like that. So let's take a look into some of these schemes. So first scheme could be with respect to Mission for Integrated Development of Horticulture. This is largely for the relatively smaller cold storage units. So it is for providing financial assistance. So under this, government provide financial assistance up to 30%, 40%, sometimes even 50% for cold storage up to 5,000 MT capacity. Then for the larger ones, government provides National Horticulture Board, NHB, that supports the construction or the modernization of cold storage facilities that range from 5,000 to 20,000 MT. Then Agriculture Infrastructure Fund, that is to facilitate term loans, that is long-term loans up to rupees 2 crores with a 3% per annum interest subvention. So interest subvention happens when you regularly pay your loan amount, then government reduces the interest up to 3%. Then Operation Green Scheme, it covers fruits, vegetables, and shrimps for price stabilization and post-harvest loss minimization. In fact, there's another scheme called TOP. Let me know what exactly TOP stands for. With respect to PYQ, again, food processing is one topic from where UPSC frequently asks questions. And generally, whatever is mentioned as part of the syllabus have been frequently asked as part of the mains examination. So one question that is directly hits what has been covered in this particular topic or this news is this question, that is, examine the scope of food processing industries in India. So within the scope, you need to talk about why it is important to have food processing industries in India. So you can write it from the perspective of the consumers, from the demand side. You can talk about why it is important for the nutrient or the nutritional safety, or also for the fact that we are more urbanizing in nature, and because of the fact that there is more nuclear families as compared to the joint families, so the requirement for high prot foods with high shelf life is also increasing. Then you can write arguments with respect to the supply side, that food processing includes or enhances the agriculture, or sorry, in terms of the salaries, it enhances the salary or the income of the farmers, and other aspects you can mention it here. Then with respect to elaborate the measures taken by the government in the food processing industries for generating employment opportunities. Right, so here you can talk about the flagship scheme that we just discussed, Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sampada Yojana, in which not only there is an emphasis on the creation of cold chain value system and the infrastructure, but the ultimate impetus is on creation of employment opportunities, right? So you can write about that. Next news is on workforce challenges in India's primary healthcare system. And this is a topic that is very much relevant from GS paper to social issues. So in social issues, you primarily have to study about three things. You have to study about health, education, and skill development, apart from some of the government interventions for the vulnerable sections, right? So here, this news was prompted. In fact, there were several articles that were written recently because the ASHA workers, you may, will discuss what ASHA workers are. So ASHA workers and the auxiliary uh, uh, midwife nurses have started strikes in several states. In fact, the strikes was there by ASHA workers in Chhattisgarh. There was an indefinite strike. And then there was other strikes that was done by the ANMs and the Anganwadi workers in Kerala and in other states. So in a way, this shows that there's a larger trend where the healthcare workers in India are not satisfied, and there's a larger trend of challenges that we are witnessing. So we must understand the circumstances under which they are working and the challenges that they are facing, because undoubtedly they are very significant as far as the healthcare ecosystem in India is concerned. So let's understand their role in a very holistic manner. So India's healthcare sector can be classified or categorized into three sectors. You have primary sector, you have the intermediate or the secondary sector, and then there is tertiary sector. So primary sector is where it is preventive sector. Preventive measures are taken, such as for nutrition safety, for childbirth, etc. So that is the primary sector at the village level, at the maybe intermediate level. Then you have the secondary tier, and the secondary tier primarily operates at the district level, where there is some sort of input of patient input systems is there, and there is some sort of hospitalization is also there. Then there is tertiary healthcare sector, which includes primarily hospitalization and super speciality, and this is largely at the level of state or at the level of the nation, or for example, AIMS can be considered as tertiary healthcare providers, right? So you have primary, you have secondary, and you have tertiary. Now, at the primary level, at the village level, you know that India's doctor-patient ratio is very poor, right? It is less than 1 to 50. So whatever WHO has recommended, India's the doctor population ratio is significantly lower. It needs to be significantly higher, which is not the case, right? So to fill the gap, we have several workers which work on a voluntary basis and on different basis. So here we have three kinds of healthcare workers or cadres that we can consider, and these are Anganwadi workers. The second one is Asha worker, and the third one is community health worker or health officials, right? So they have different names depending on different states. So Anganwadi workers were established in 1975 through ICDS, that is Integrated Child Development Scheme, and their function was majorly preventive in nature, preventive healthcare, right? In terms of population control, in terms of ensuring that the birth happens at institutional level, there is proper maintenance of mother or care of mother and child. So that was about Anganwadi. So and their work over after this has also increased in scope as well. Then with respect to Asha, Asha essentially is accredited social healthcare activist, right? So they were established in 2000, I think 2004 or 5, under NRHM or National Rural Healthcare Mission, and their function majorly was to promote some sort of to promote awareness about healthcare facilities and to ensure that people are aware of sanitation, about immunization, etc. Right? So more or less, their ASHA workers and the Anganwadi workers' role often collided or had certain collapse or converged to a large extent. Then you have community officers or health officers. So they were established in 2017 under the Ayushman Bharat scheme. So there was another. It had two components: primary at the primary level and at the tertiary level. So they were at the health and wellness level. They were created. Now, in terms of the payment, the Anganwadi workers generally get paid by a system called as honorarium method, which means that there is no fixed payment that they get, but they get as per the patronage of client, right? So it can vary substantially from one state to other. So in general, as per a recent report, they get paid close to rupees 12,000 per month. Now, ASHA worker also, they do not get paid monthly with a fixed payment salary. They also get paid or they get paid on a basis of their performance. So depending on the number of patients they have treated or they have referred, they get a cut based on that. So as per several or as per a newspaper report, their general income is close to 12,000 or 8 to 10,000, close to the Anganwadi workers. And the community health workers, they are also not permanently, but they are also on the basis of voluntary only, right? So this is the basic structure or the basic composition and the functioning of these healthcare professionals. And you can also take a look at this, that Anganwadi workers, uh, ASHA workers and community health officers, CHOs, health and wellness centers 2018. So again, they have this is their primary role and this is their pay structure. Now, what are the challenges that they are facing? So these are the primary role, but their role is not just limited to their primary role. In fact, they're supposed to do other works as well, such as enumeration of population control or things which are beyond healthcare, taking care of the health, right? So they have multiple aspects of work, such as population enumeration, non-communicable disease, and palliative care. Palliative care basically is for treating elders. But at the same time, even though their work is increasing, their responsibility is increasing, it is not accompanied by corresponding pay or any sort of support. So that is one of the major challenge that they face. The second challenge that they face is that they do not get fair remuneration and any sort of social protection. They get their payment is often low, it is often irregular, and they do not enjoy major social security. They also have limited safety during field work. most of the time they are recognized as volunteers even though they are supposed to work as full-time employees. Third is there is growing union presence in the ASHA workers, and especially in the ASHA workers because of the growing dissent that they are facing, especially in Kerala and Haryana. ASHA, ASHAs, they are unionizing, and the Anganwadi workers are also, there is unions there as well. So they are demanding regularization and fair pay. Then more or often than not, up to 10 to 15% of the post of the auxiliary nurse midwife post and 20 to 25% doctor post remain vacant. Now the problem with that of vacancy is that the work that gets increased has to be done by these people only, that they do not get any additional support because of the extra work or the load that they are getting into. Then there is contractualization trend where rising contractual hiring happens, and this reflects cost cutting and ease of administration, but it lacks clear career growth or cadre structure, right? So because of this, it really, there is no straight way in which they can get promotion or there is any sort of job security, right? So these are some of the challenges, and because of which the ASHA workers, the Anganwadi workers are getting into the various trade unions, and now they're also striking in several of these states. Okay, so if you want to look like what should be the way forward, the way forward should be that their role must be recognized, and there should be some sort of formalization of their pay, and some sort of social security should be given to them, right? So because of their importance role, especially that was seen during the COVID time, the role of ASHA workers were significantly enhanced during that time. So we need to recognize them as an essential bridge between the formal healthcare sector and the population at large, right? So recognizing their needs, we must undertake several reforms to ensure their working condition. The next news is about China files complaint in WTO over subsidies under PLI scheme. And this can be covered under GS paper 2 IR as the bilateral relations or dispute between two countries, including and especially because of the fact that China is India's neighbor, and also because of the fact that WTO is involved. So it will also be part of GS3 economy. So what China has alleged is that in that 3 of India's PLI schemes, so we know that under PLI there are several sub schemes, including several schemes which are for 14 sectors related to electric vehicles, battery and automobiles. They are providing financial benefits to companies which are operating in India that is dependent on the domestic content value addition, right? So because of that, China alleges that this requirement is being unfair to the Chinese companies, right? And that is why China has taken this complaint over to WTO. So let's take a look into the specific of the complaints and the issues. So the 3 specific PLI schemes that are challenged by China are: first scheme is to incentivize establishment of giga-scale manufacturing capabilities of the ACC batteries. Second is scheme for auto industry, which seeks to buttress or support the manufacturing of advanced automotive technologies, AAT products. Third is scheme to promote EV manufacturing by attracting global EV manufacturing. Recently, you know that Tesla has also opened its branch in India, or its showroom in India, right? So these are some of the things that China has become very concerned about, especially from the fact that there's a scheme called China Plus One that seeks to reduce this whole dependence of China with respect to important electronic manufacturing, or especially with respect to manufacturing, or as a hub of global supply chain, right? So here the contention is with respect to DVA, that is domestic value addition. So DVA requirements under these PLI schemes incentivize the companies to use domestic goods rather than imported goods, and they are a violation of, as per China, they are a violation of agreement on subsidies and countervailing measures that is called as SCM of WTO under prohibited category, right? So WTO does not particularly prohibit provision of subsidies, but it has categorized the subsidy into several groups. So there is one that is allowed and or allowed or regulated, but the other one is that it is prohibited. So let's take a look into what exactly is the categorization here. So the SCM agreement under Article 1 defines a subsidy. What is a subsidy? It's a financial contribution made by government or a public body that confers a benefit to a particular company. Second, the SCM agreement creates two types or two categories of subsidies. One is prohibited, that you cannot do it under any circumstance, and the second one is actionable, which is fine, but it will be regulated. So prohibited, two categories of subsidies are prohibited under Article 3. First, it consists of subsidies contingent in law or in fact, whether wholly or as one of several conditions on export performance, export subsidies. So that is prohibited. Second is, it consists of subsidies contingent whether solely or as one of the several conditions, the use of domestic over imported goods, that is local or domestic content subsidies. And this is the thing that China has while alleged that India is violating the second subsidies, right? Third is actionable. So what is actionable subsidies? They are subject to challenge either through multilateral dispute settlement or through countervailing action, right? So what could be India's argument as to contest this? So India can argue that most of these measures are already done by the developed countries like US and EU, or even by Japan, right? So if India is also doing this, perhaps it is not going against the global trend, right? Secondly, India is doing this to promote the green industry, the electronics industry, which requires some sort of alternate supply chain, right? Which is also promoted by several initiatives like supply chain resilience initiative, right? So India can prove that it can harmonize this initiative or this measure with respect to other initiative that India has already signed. So as far as legality is concerned, it is not clear that as of now this can be disputed, or it can definitely go against India, right? So India will definitely challenge this notion, and we'll see what exactly are going to be the result in this regard. So moreover, what we should understand is that China is not contesting India's PLI scheme or the production linked incentive scheme. What China is contesting is that India is providing this condition of domestic content requirement, which is not fair to their companies, because these companies, the Chinese company, will be taking their own inputs, right? So in a way, India is prioritizing the companies which are using the domestic content over those companies which are using foreign content. So if you look at the PLI scheme, it was launched in 2020 to boost domestic manufacturing through targeted performance-based incentives across strategic sectors. So initially it targeted 3 sectors only, but later it was expanded to cover 14 sectors that ranged from electronics and textiles to automobiles and food processing. So all those which are very crucial for India's economy and for strategic development, these are all part of PLI scheme. So when it comes to PYQs, from WTO, UPSC has asked a particular question, but that was not with respect to any manufacturing, but that was for with respect to agriculture. So what are the direct and indirect subsidies provided to farm sector in India? Discuss the issues raised by WTO in relation to agricultural subsidies, right? So a similar question can be asked with respect to this subsidies or the context can be the same. The West is fostering India as an alternative to reduce dependence on China's supply chain and as a strategic ally to counter China's political and economic dominance. Explain this statement with example. Now, this is precisely the reason why China is contesting India's moves, because China feels that even though this move is not going to uh, hit itself in the near future, but it has potential to harm it in the going future or in the long term. This may impact China as a destination for global supply chain, right? That is why China is contesting this move. Next news, India's total installed capacity, electricity capacity, crosses 500 gigawatt, and this is part of GS3 environment. Interestingly, this news is even better because 50% of this installed capacity is coming from the non-fossil fuel sources. And moreover, with this development, India has achieved one of its major COP26 Panchamrit goals to have the 50% of installed electric power from non-fossil fuel sources by 2030. So it was the target. So India has received or got the target 5 years prior, right? So it is a very welcome news. So if you look at the present energy mix, the non-fossil fuel is around 51%, which is close to 256 gigawatt, and the fossil fuel is around 49%. The share within the share of renewable energy, solar accounts for the largest, which is about 127 gigawatt, wind around 53 gigawatt, and hydro with respect to 47 gigawatt. And the reason why the renewable energy sector is working in India is because of several factors, and most importantly, because of the fact that the government or there is political will, right? And because of the political will, you'll also see that there are regulatory effort that is also supported, and several of the measures or the schemes that are targeting different aspects of renewable energy sector. So within this, let's take a look at this. So first is PLI scheme, which is supposed to boost domestic manufacturing of high efficiency solar PV modules, photovoltaic modules, right? So this is to incentivize production or manufacturing. So this is because unless we have solar PV modules, we will not be able to harness the solar energy. So this is first is very important. Second is PM Kusum, to install grid-connected solar power plants and solarize agricultural pumps. So we know that how much electricity subsidy is to be given to the farmers. But what if these can be converted, or it is to be done through the renewable energy mechanism? That exactly was the thought process behind the PM Kusum scheme. Third is green hydrogen mission. In fact, UPSC also asked a question from this topic as well. And green hydrogen mission is aimed at making India a global hub for the production, utilization, and export of green hydrogen. Let me know in the comment section, what do you understand by green hydrogen? Green energy corridor to strengthen the transmission network for evacuation of large scale renewable power, and RPO obligation, that is the purchasing obligation. So it mandates the DISCOM is distribution companies, to procure a specified minimum percentage of power from the renewable sources, right? So they are supposed to purchase certain minimum amount of energy from the renewable sources. So because of all these measures, including the manufacturing support, including the regulatory support, including the impetus on different sources of renewable energy, we have reached this milestone. But it is not without challenges. Just because we have reached the installed capacity at 251 gigawatt, or around 51%, it does not make that renewable energy is free of challenges. It has several challenges. And one of the most important key issue is with respect to the storage system, because you cannot particularly store the renewable energy. Why? Because they are variable and unpredictable, as they are dependent on the weather conditions. So if there is no sun, then perhaps you cannot have the production of the solar energy. Similarly, with respect to wind, you require the continuation of wind for the turbines to blow, right? So here, all of them are variable and unpredictable. That is why this is one of the important issue with respect to the renewable energy. The second one is there is transmission bottleneck. So the solar plants can be built within a year, but the transmission, distribution, all the wiring, setting up of wires, all this thing, they take up to 2.5 years. So the whole ecosystem takes a lot of time to be established. Third one is financial risk, which means that unsigned power purchase agreements and financially weak discoms hinders project uptake, right? Fourth, high import dependence. We rely highly on the foreign solar modules and critical minerals. Also, there is land and policy delays. So land acquisition hurdles and inconsistent state regulation, they slow down the project execution. So these are some of the challenges that the renewable energy ecosystem face in India. So what can be the way ahead? So first thing is that we need to invest in the storage system. So for this, we need to mandate large-scale battery energy storage system, that is BESS. Second, we need to create stronger infrastructure, especially with respect to creating the entire energy corridor, right? So fast track the green energy corridor. So corridor basically would mean from the production to the distribution, there should be some sort of seamless connectivity, and streamline the land approval so that there is no delays in terms of the distribution and construction. Then as we are using a lot of export material or imported products such as the solar PV modules, there should be some impetus on the domestic manufacturing. For this, we must expand the local production of solar modules, batteries, and green hydrogen technologies. Lastly, we need to ensure that there is policy stability, ensure predictable regulations, and promote decentralized renewable energy, especially the rooftop solar, right? So these could be some of the ways in which we can sustain the momentum as far as renewable energy ecosystem is concerned in the country. From the PYQ, UPSC has asked a question like this: access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy is the sine qua non to achieve sustainable development goals. Comment on the progress made in India in this regard. So definitely, if you want to comment, you can talk about the recent development that has happened. Now you tell me which SDGs are corresponding to the energy sector in the country. Now let's move to the place in news, where we'll be covering Tajikistan with its capital as Dushanbe. So why this was in news? Because India recently withdraw from an air force or air base in Tajikistan. In fact, it was not a recent withdrawal. In fact, India had withdrew from this place in 2022 only. And India set up this base in 2002. Now, why did India withdraw from this? Is because of the fact that there was pressure on Tajikistan from China and Russia for them not to lease their airbase to India, right? That was one reason. Also, this was created in alignment with the formation of Northern Alliance in 2002, and now with the victory of Taliban, the formation or the continuation of Northern Alliance was not that important, or that was meaningless, right? So it was collapsed anyway. So therefore, it was not a point for India to continue with this air base, right? So this is why Tajikistan was in news. So if you look at the map of Tajikistan, it is very important to notice that even though it is a landlocked country in Central Asia, its border lies with China. It shares its border with China, with Afghanistan, with Kyrgyzstan, and with Uzbekistan here. And more importantly, it lies from the POK just 20 kilometers, right? So it is very near compared to the Pakistan occupied Kashmir. So India, if it is present here, it has a strategic advantage. India can directly hit Peshawar, if it is India, has a presence in the airbase that was there earlier. Anyway, as far as Tajikistan is concerned, it is also a member of Shanghai Cooperation Organization and CSTO. Then its strategic relevance lies, it lies near the Wakhan corridor, right? And it links Central and South Asia. Some of the geographical features with respect to climate, it is a mid-latitude continent, hot summers, mild winters, semi-arid to polar in Pamir Mountains. Highest point is Ismail Somoni Peak, which is 7,495 meters. What are the important lakes? Karakul and this Iskanderkul are the key alpine lakes. So they have alpine lakes. Okay. Now let's talk about the quick updates. Within this, the first is doctrine of merger. And this was recently in news because Supreme Court has recently held that doctrine of merger is not an absolute doctrine. It does not mean, or it is not a rigid doctrine. So when it comes to polity, we should be aware of some of the doctrines that are established or that are clarified by the Supreme Court from time to time, right? So doctrine basically means a way of thinking, some sort of philosophical paradigm, right? For example, we have a doctrine of basic structure. So it tells us to what extent there is the power of parliament to amend the constitution. Or then there is doctrine of harmonious construction. So here doctrine of merger essentially is with respect to two things. First is with respect to how should the verdict of the lower court and the higher court should be looked into. Should it be looked into contravention or should it be looked in the form of complementary form? So the idea is that there is a merger of things, right? For example, if the rationale is that there cannot be more than one operative decree at a given point of time. So if a high court has said something, it cannot, it has to be taken at the final face value, but it has to ensure, or if it is possible for it to merge with the lower court judgment, that is to be done, right? So it applies irrespective of whether the appellate court has affirmed, modified, or reversed the decree of the trial court. It means that after, so this is the most important part with respect to doctrine of merger. After a higher court gives its verdict, the lower court's decision becomes part of the ruling and is no longer treated as a standalone judgment. So if the lower court has given a punishment of say 2 years plus say fine of 20,000, and if it goes to appeal and the Supreme Court says and the higher court says that the punishment will be same as the lower court has decided, but will reduce the fine to 10K. So the modified rule will be there, and this will be merged with this. So the lower court judgment will be merged with the higher court, and the ultimate, and wherever it is possible to harmonize, it will be harmonized, and wherever it is not possible to harmonize, the verdict of the higher court will be applicable. So this is what is called as doctrine of merger. So what is the development here? Supreme Court has said that it is not an absolute one. So which means that in some cases, when this high court has not, or when there is no sort of a convergence in the judgment, then we cannot say that doctrine of merger has taken into consideration, right? So this particular judgment or this doctrine came into to form in a very important judgment called State of Madras versus Madurai Mills Company Limited in 1967. Supreme Court held that the doctrine of merger, it applies depending on the nature of the appellate or the revisional order and the scope of the statutory provisions granting such jurisdiction. So this is the limitation that is imposed on this particular doctrine. And what is the benefit of this? It maintains the decorum of the hierarchy of the courts and tribunals, and more importantly, it ensures finality in the judicial decision. Next is Legal Metrology Packaged Communities Amendment Rules 2025. So here what is important is that you understand the meaning of the term metrology. Metrology basically means scientific way of measurement. So what is the development that is done is that the Department of Consumer Affairs, which is under the Ministry of Consumer Affairs, has notified this particular rule. And what exactly has happened within this rule is that uh, the font size and the dimensional aspects standards should be there for the medical devices rules should apply to all the medical devices, right? So that there is some sort of uniformity and the consumers will be able to read and understand all these things. And this is done in accordance with the medical devices rules 2017. What is the aim? Aim is to ensure regulatory harmony, reduce compliance ambiguity, and enhance consumer protection in the healthcare sector. So that is all that is required from this. Then UNEP's Adaptation Gap Report 2025. So very quickly, you should understand what is adaptation and what is mitigation. So mitigation is generally a long-term measure to subvert the effect of climate change. In terms of climate change, you have two strategies: mitigation on one hand and adaptation on the other hand. So adaptation is to cope up with the effects of climate change, and this is to control or maybe mitigate or reduce the effect of climate change. For example, any moves that is undertaken to reduce the emission of carbon dioxide or greenhouse gas will come within the rubric or within the classification of mitigation. But when there is any initiative that is taken to improve the infrastructure or to improve some sort of or provide some compensation with respect to loss and damage, that would come within the category of adaptation. Now, what is the development here? So UNEP has provided a report that is called Adaptation Gap Report. Within this, what it has provided is that the developing countries are facing an adaptation shortfall. So generally, the adaptation fund is provided to the developing countries from the developed countries, right? The reason is because of historic responsibilities. And this shortfall is of the nature of 310 to 365 billion by this, and current funding is only $26 billion. Implementation lag is, even though countries have plans, but the execution and quality remains weak. Why? Because of the obvious reason that there is lesser funding. Third, there is the report has called for urgent and major scale up in finance, innovation cost, tools, and stronger resilience planning. In terms of India's scenario, India has advanced its National Adaptation Fund and state action plans, but remains highly vulnerable due to heat stress, erratic monsoons, and coastal flooding. Now, you tell me, what mitigation measures has India taken in this regard? Climate Inequality Report. What is important is that it is released by World Inequality Lab, and what is the key finding of this report? The key finding is that top 1% of the countries contribute, top 1% of the people contribute 15% of global consumption-based emission, but 41% of the emissions arising from private capital ownership. Per capita emission of the top 1% are 75 times higher than that of the bottom 50% by consumption, and around 100 companies are responsible for 71% of industrial GHG emissions. So not only there is income inequalities, there is also inequality in terms of the climate effect or in terms of the emissions creation, right? So this again is one of the important development. Then large Magellanic Cloud. So what is the report here? Researchers have identified 5 carbon-rich compounds surrounding a very new star or a nascent star that is called ST6, and it is present in a galaxy called Large Magellanic Cloud or LMC. The discovery could illuminate, or it could show, how life's building blocks formed in the universe infancy. So when with respect to LMC, so it is a galaxy, but it's a satellite galaxy of the Milky Way, and it floats in space nearly 200,000 light years from Earth. This dwarf galaxy looms large on the southern nighttime sky at 20 times the apparent diameter of the full moon. Vast clouds of gas within it slowly collapse to form new stars. So all of this development was witnessed through a very particular telescope, that is James Webb telescope. Next, National Crisis Management Committee. So the Cabinet Secretary, T.V. Somnathan, he has chaired a meeting of the National Crisis Management Committee in regard to cyclones in the Bay of Bengal. Recently, you may have heard that there are several cyclones that are coming up, and they are going to have their landfall in Andhra Pradesh, right? So what is NCMC? So it is a nodal statutory body which was given the statutory status in 2005, 2025 by the Disaster Management Act of 2025 to deal with the major disaster which have serious or national ramification. It is headed by Cabinet Secretary as the chairperson, and other such members, mostly it is other members would be the chief secretaries of different states, especially those states which are affected by the cyclones. The power is first can evaluate preparedness of for any disaster or emergency situation, and more importantly, it is to coordinate and monitor the national disaster response efforts. Then quantum informatics scrambling. So Google has achieved a verifiable quantum advantage, proving its quantum processor Willow outperforms the fastest supercomputer, right? So this is a very important development because it shows how quantum computing can even overcome or overpower the fastest of the supercomputer, right? So what exactly is quantum informatics scrambling? So basically, quantum computers work through various process called in interference and with respect to quantum informatics scrambling, right? So in this particular case, this whole analysis or this whole experiment was done through quantum information scrambling. So it's a very niche way of understanding how a quantum computer works. So it refers to the rapid spread of information across a quantum system, making it inaccessible to local measurement. For example, if there is a swimming pool present like this, and you drop a dye of or any color of say red color or blue color, right? You put it across in this particular swimming pool. For some time, it will stay here in this local area, but later on, it will spread across to the entire pool. And by doing it, you will not be able to identify where it has gone, right? So the normal computers or the normal system will not be able to identify the changes or the whole manipulation of data like this. But it can be done through a process called as quantum information scrambling. So the whole process of discovering the way in which this color is distributed, that process is called as quantum information scrambling. The significance is it demonstrates a verifiable quantum advantage and enhances the understanding of quantum technologies, right? In fact, this is one of the area for which Nobel Prize was given for this year in physics. So this is all about the news today for 30th October. Make sure that you attempt the questions in the screen that is coming up and provide your answer in the comment section. Thank you and all the best.